Hello, welcome to Carnell Knowledge. My name is Tom Carnell. This is a show I do 3 times a week, in which every episode I review / recommend 5 movies, a book, and 5 records. I am a guy who was a buyer for Tower Records, Record Factory and Warehouse for about 20 years. I published and wrote Carpet Nocturne magazine back in the 90s, sort of a dark art publication in which we interviewed people that were artists and filmmakers and painters and sculptors and all that kind of a thing. I wrote for Fangoria Dread Central for 15 years. I did a bunch of podcasts after that. And now I'm an author. You can go to my Amazon page and pick up some cool spooky stories. There's novels there, short story collections. There's some interview stuff. I have a new book out called Monolith Records. It's sort of believe it or not, it's a romantic comedy. I have a new book coming out soon, within a month or so, called Open Late. And then after that, we've got a couple more in the pipe. Let's see. Remember to watch this video to the end. It helps me with the algorithm. Please like and subscribe. You know the drill. All of that helps me get the word out, get more people watching, so that then I can do more and more cool stuff. Let's see. If you go comment below, I get back to people pretty quickly. And also, if you go in the description of this video, you will find links. Links to trailer films and sometimes full movies of the movies I'm going to talk about, a link to the Amazon page of the book I'm going to talk about, and then full YouTube playlists of all of the records. So that way, if I say something that piques your interest, don't just take my word for it, because go to the link and you can listen to the entire record and you can decide for yourself. I think that's important. Okay, so with all that business taken care of, let's talk a little bit about this episode's movies. We're going to begin in 2011, a film directed by Ben Wheatley, starring Neil Maskell, Miana Burine, Harry Simpson. It's called Kill List. And as we say around here, the synopsis is as follows. Nearly a year after a botched job, a hitman takes a new assignment with the promise of a big payoff for 3 killings. What starts off as an easy task soon unravels, sending the killer into the heart of darkness. This is a great film. I did not really see this coming. It came upon my desk back right after it first came out, as a part of an interview I was supposed to do. And what can I tell you? It's a British sort of crime / horror film. It doesn't really let up for a minute. The acting is solid. The direction is solid. The story is very engaging and always sort of piques your interest. It's good stuff all the way around. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It's very kind of noir in a way, and then it sort of veers off into the horror realm. And I loved it. I thought it was great, and I think that you will too. Our next film from 2014, directed by Adam Robital, starring Jill Larson, Anne Ramsey, and Michelle Ong. It's called The Taking of Deborah Logan. Has to do with an elderly woman, a film crew that is there at a house where some people are taking care of their elderly mother who has Alzheimer's. And what begins as sort of a documentary and is quite sad about that horrible disease and how it affects not only the people afflicted with it, but also the people ducks have the people that are around them that are put in a position of having to care for them. That in and of itself is sort of a low-key horror film. But then as the film moves along, we sort of get the impression that as this Deborah Logan's character's intellect is seeping away, something else is seeping in. And it's quite good. It gets a little ham-fisted. It gets a little haunted house pop-up monster creature thingies at the end. but I think that there is a really terrific horror film in here. Unfortunately, it's almost feels like someone stepped in the last act and said, "Nah, we need to do this. We need some jump scares, and we need some other stuff, and we're gonna throw a bunch of mysticism on it." But at its core, there's a really creepy film here. My only hope is that someone does it. The Taking of Deborah Logan, though, I think is well worth checking out. It has its definite moments, but again, I don't want to lament for the film that I had imagined in my head, but it's a much better film. But this is fine. This is a good hour and a half, 2 hours. The performances are solid. The woman who plays the main character, the elderly woman, is great, taking a lot of really pretty amazing risks. Very enjoyable, but again, the film I had in my head was a little different. Our third film, this one I don't know, it came and went, and not many people, still to this day, they don't talk about it. 2023 film called The Identity. James Mangold, who's a great director, did a bunch of the Mission Impossible movies. He did Logan, he did The Wolverine, he did Ford versus Ferrari, he did Walk the Line. It stars John Cusack, Ray Liotta, Amanda Peet, John Hawkes, and Alfred Molina. It has to do with a group of people who are at a hotel in the rain, a very hardcore sort of rainstorm, and one by one, people start dying. There's some other stuff involved that I'm not going to go into because it's a big spoiler for the entire film. But it reminded me a lot of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, or 10 Little Indians. I thought that, I still think this is a good film. It's much better than people give it credit for. And it had me sort of guessing up until the reveal, the big reveal at the end, which we're not going to talk about. I had read in my research that several endings had been shot for this so that they could keep a lot of the press and a lot of, in some cases, even the actors guessing like which one are they going to use. But yeah, I saw it on Tubi. It was free, and I had seen it back when it first came out, and yeah, good stuff. And I don't know why more people don't talk about it. Let's see. Our next film, excuse me, 1962. We've been talking a lot about Hammer films on this show, and the fact that I had reviewed this, I think it's called Flesh and Blood. It was a Hammer horror studio documentary. And when you think of Hammer films, you usually think of a very specific kind of film. Very lush color, very Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Dracula, Frankenstein, even The Mummy at some point. But they also did a whole lot of science fiction stuff, like the Quatermass films, which I'm going to get to in an upcoming episode, and a couple of other things that we've talked about already. Cash on Demand is a film that I talked about early on in this show, which is now one of my favorite sort of Christmas movies in a weird way. But anyway, this movie is called These Are the Damned, aka The Damned. It's directed by Joseph Lucy. Stars Donald Carey, who's in Shadow of a Doubt, Shirley Ann Field, who is in Peeping Tom, another film that we covered here before. Viveka Lanfers, who was in Stargate. She was also Aunt Bedelia in Creepshow, the whole I Want My Father's Day kick. And a really, really young Oliver Reed. Has to do with an American tourist who runs afoul of a youth gang leader because he's sort of hitting on his sister. And they end up on an island and involved in a science fiction-y sort of project with a bunch of kids that are being kept underground for reasons that may or may not be nefarious. The movie was made at the end of the Cold War, and it shows in a lot of its precepts, I guess is maybe a word I'm looking for. Very paranoid. It's one of Hammer Studios' oddest films because it's very schizophrenic in that it has to do with this pseudo love affair between McDonald Carey and the young girl, and the whole Oliver Reed and the youth gang thing, and then all of that runs headlong into this sort of science fiction-y project. Very cynical, this film. I'll tell you now, the relationship between McDonald Carey, who's in his probably late 40s, early 50s, and the girl who at one point says she's 20, feels a little questionable, a little creepy. I had wished that they had made it either bring him higher, cast someone and bring that character's age down, or bring this girl's age up. Probably the former, because then it would make sense with what Oliver Reed is all about. The rollout for the film is super slow. Again, this whole thing about the youth gang targeting tourists gets in the way. If what you want to do is get to the science fiction sort of complex, all of that other stuff is just subterfuge. It's just things put in the way before you get to what you really want to do. And at some point, and it happened here, is that all of that stuff about the youth gang and them running around, you start to resent it because because of the synopsis, that we're going to get to the science fiction stuff, and so all of that other stuff just sort of like, you're like, well, let's get going. The plot is unnecessarily complicated. It remains interesting, but it is confused, meandering, and schizophrenic is words I would use. The sci-fi aspect is really interesting about these children that are being raised and taught sort of in isolation. There's scenes of them in a schoolroom, but the teaching is all done via video monitor, which once it's all explained, it makes a little more sense. I'll tell you now, though, there is a song in this that keeps getting played. It's called Black Leather, Smash, Smash, Smash. By the end of this film, it will trigger you to want to just pitch a chair through a window. It is the most annoying thing ever. And it seems, at least in the beginning, it's everywhere. Like, not only is it in the soundtrack, but characters are like walking along going black leather, like singing the song, and it's just like, ugh, enough already. The film is interesting, and I recommend it because of its role in the whole filmography of Hammer. And again, the sci-fi aspect is very, very cool. It's very, very cool. Up next, 1963, directed by Don Sharp. It's called Kiss of the Vampire. Stars Edward D'Souza, Jennifer Daniel, Clifford Evans, Noel Willman, who was in Dr. Zhivago and The Man Who Knew Too Much. I remember seeing this on Bob Wilkins on Creature Features back when I was just a kid. I specifically remember an image of a castle spire with bats sort of flying around. So the synopsis goes, when car trouble strands a honeymoon couple in a small southern European village, an aristocratic family in the area reaches out to help them with sinister consequences. We know what those sinister consequences are because the title's Kiss of the Vampire. It's this sort of vampiric cult, has shades of sort of satanic panic, early satanic panic, because that hadn't happened yet, but the devil is definitely in play here. Some of the things I noticed or I had read in my research was that the rubber bats, and there's a lot of them, they're kind of rubber bats on strings, but they were purchased at Woolworths. by the by the production. Yeah, sure, why not? The climax was originally written for the film Brides of Dracula, and then they decided to go with something else, and so they just sort of lifted it off of that and slapped it on the end of this one. Universal's TV version deleted the entire ending, which blows my mind because that's the thing that I remember. The bats flying and the bats coming through the window, and the demise of the satanic sort of vampiric cult. That's everything that I remember from the film, and they ended up cutting it. Has a great opening of a girl getting attacked by a vampire that is... I'll tell you, Hammer knew how to grab your attention, like right out of the box. The score is terrific, and it's very reminiscent of the film Horror of Dracula. That sort of staccato horns and strings. If you remember, there's a famous scene of Peter Cushing as Van Helsing and Christopher Lee as Dracula. And they end up, it's the one where Peter Cushing runs down the table and rips the drapery away, and it sort of pins Dracula in the sunlight. Of course, it's a Hammer film, another Hammer film. So the sets and the costume are opulent and super colorful. The film looks really, really good. There's moments in it though where when they after the car breaks down and they're having dinner with this aristocratic family, the main dude is hitting on the bride, like right in front of the husband. And where's the husband? He's over there petting the dog. And that just fell flat. Didn't really strike me like that was what would be going on. The tropes, the vampiric tropes, adhere only when it's convenient. But then they wildly divert into something else. And they it becomes, in the end, neither fish nor fowl. But overall, I thought it was a unique vampire film, a little rote at times. It has its moments, and the moments that it has are super cool. But there are also some by-the-book aspects. And that ending, though, is very, very fun. When the bats sort of come through the stained glass and start attacking everybody, it's the shit. It's really, really great stuff. Let's see. Moving on to my book of the week. It's this, The Shores of Another Sea by Chad Oliver. I got this, my wife came home with a big box of books that someone at her work was giving away. And this was amongst them. And I had no idea. I went into this colder than cold. I won't bury the lead. I liked it. Didn't love it. Synopsis. On a dusty remote plain of Kenya, Royce Crawford runs a baboonery. If I had a dime for every time in this book the word baboonery is used, I'd be a rich man. One day they're off checking traps, and he sees a strange light in the sky. And then suddenly things start happening around the baboonery. One baboon is killed, one is escaped. And he finds over time that the baboons are starting to change in a weird way. There's a strange, cold sort of look of intelligence, and he starts to suspect that there are alien forces at work. And little by little, he starts to feel not so much as the hunter, but as the hunted. The book starts out pretty slow, but that's a good thing because it lets the reader get used to the strange environs, the idea of living in an isolated part of the Kenyan landscape, gets you to know the care and the feeding and what they're doing with the baboons, which is essentially packing them up and shipping them off to America for scientific experiments and for zoos and that kind of a thing. But then here's the thing. Once he sees the light, and once he starts to scratch his head and say, what's that? And then once all this stuff starts happening with the baboons, there's a leap made from, isn't that strange, to these are aliens, and they're they're doing something with these baboons, and they're changing them in some way. It's done on a dime, and at no point does anyone go like, "Really, dude? Does that even make a lick of sense?" Everyone just buys into it, and then we're off on this sort of alien track without ever looking back. The ending is solid, but it does lack the sort of punch that you would think would come with something like this. But overall, I found the book pretty fascinating, and it gives a really good immersion into what it's like to live in the middle of nowhere in Africa. Would I recommend it? Yeah, sure. If you like that kind of science fiction stuff, that nature run amok kind of science fiction, you'll enjoy it. I don't know that this would ever, maybe in the right hands, it would make a good film, but for the most part, no, it's perfectly fine as a book. Would I read other Chad Oliver books? I don't know. Maybe. It depends. I looked around at his bibliography and nothing really jumped out, but I was glad that I read this. Again, that's what it looks like. All right, moving on to records. We got 5 of them here, and they're all over the place. First one, 1962, Fred Jackson. The album is called Hootin' and Tootin'. It's the debut record and his only record from this American saxophonist. It's very sort of funky soul jazz. He ended up playing with Little Richard's band, but for some reason, this was the only record that he made. I think it's a great record. I never hear anyone ever talk about him. Whenever someone says Fred Jackson, they usually mention the soul singer Freddie Jackson, which is a completely different thing. But it's one of those records you could throw on late at night and kind of groove to, and have some wine and that kind of a thing. It never gets frenetic or sort of noodly. It's a solid record. And again, these things happen, where an album is made, an artist is great, and just time moves on, and they get totally ignored. And that's a damn shame, especially with old Fred Jackson here. This record reminded me of a whole list of things. Leo Parker, Buddy Tate, Cliff Smalls, Horace Silver, Babyface Willette, and in my world, High Praise. It reminded me of a little of Ike Quebec, who, if you haven't heard Ike Quebec, you got to hear Ike Quebec. He's the bomb. Maybe a little Illinois Jaquette as well thrown in there. Our next record from 2018, the artist is named Dewa Budjana. The album is called MAHANDINI. Budjana is an Indonesian guitar player. He was the lead guitarist and songwriter for a band I'd never heard of called Gigi. His solo work drafts in people the likes of Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater, Tony Levin, Gary Husband, who played with Alan Holdsworth a lot. This is high-energy rock, blending prog rock, jazz fusion, and Southeast Asian melodic traditions. It's got a harder edge jazz fusion, but boy, is he a good player. Yeah, I was blown away. And it made me do a little more research, and I found that there's a host of Indonesian guitar players that are just the bomb. And we're going to be covering some of those in upcoming episodes. Let's see, reminded me of things like Pat Metheny, John McLaughlin, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Bill Frisell, Nicholas Meyer, Jacob Bro, Yucca Havisto, and the Hypersonic Factor. Do I recommend this? Absolutely. He's got a grip of records out, and I did a sort of, I call it a test drive, where you sort of pop through songs, and there wasn't one that I didn't add to a list and add to my inbox, and I'll be getting around to at some point. Moving up next, 2023. So there's a group from New York City called Morricone Youth, and yeah, they're very heavily reliant on the idea of Ennio Morricone. And what they do is they write original music for pre-existing films, in this case, Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin. But there's records that are dedicated to Night of the Living Dead and a host of other things. This is very cool. I love Morricone Youth, and it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, if the film didn't exist, this would be a soundtrack to a film that didn't exist. The film does exist, and I don't know if they've ever done this, but I know that sometimes these guys will perform. They'll perform in front of like silent films, Phantom of the Opera, I want to say, and things like that. But I would just wonder if you took the existing score out of a film like Night of the Living Dead, which is all library music, and dropped their music in, how it would work. Excuse me. Very much enjoyed this, and as I enjoy all of Morricone Youth's records. Reminds me of bands like Spindrift, Galezio, Secret Chiefs 3, and the Italian composer Piero Piccioni. Very enjoyable, liked it a lot, and again, as I do all of the Morricone Youth. Our fourth record is from 2007. The band is called Trion, Trion. The album is called Pilgrim. They are a Dutch progressive rock band. Think 70s aesthetic meets symphonic rock. They heavily use the mellotron, and guitar is right out front. It's an instrumental record, so there's no vocals that you have to contend with. Some people don't like prog or fusion with vocals, especially if it's in another language. For me, I made the jump to, I don't really care what they're saying, but the voice is just another instrument in the whole melange of the overall piece. Extremely melodic, extremely fluid. It's good stuff. It reminded me of things like bands like Sanhedrin, Genesis, Focus, Camel, Pink Floyd, IQ, Gracious, and Yes. So that helps put up sort of walls that you sort of know the space we're operating in. Very much enjoy. They have another record out that, besides Pilgrim, that as soon as I heard this, I went and I added it to my inbox. So we'll probably be getting into that at some point. So there's that. Sidebar. Today I just heard the new Yes. They have a new record out called Aurora. They put out a single. It was a title track, and I just heard it, and man, it is rough. I did not enjoy it one bit. I'm not a huge Yes fan, but this just seemed, it sounded like a Yes sound-alike band, like say an early Star Castle or something like that. Didn't enjoy it. And then on the last spot, I have two records. Both are by the Greek artist Evangelis Papathanasiou, or Vangelis, and also the Greek actress, vocalist Irene Pappas. The first record is from 1979. It's called ODES. Second record is from 1986, and it's called Rhapsodies. It is very much a Vangelis record. It has all of his earmarks, and then over the top of that comes Pappas, who has a great resonant voice. Just really great stuff. Fusion of traditional Greek folk, Byzantine music with atmospheric synth soundscapes. They sounded to me like prayers set to like new age ambient music. Very enjoyable. One of the things that struck me was, so if you look at the timeline, Rhapsodies was released in 1986. In 1987, the band Dead Can Dance made a radical shift in what they were doing. They're from sort of a more industrial sound to more of an ethereal, folky, kind of gothy sound. And Rhapsodies came out in 86. So it was Rhapsodies, and the next year, Dead Can Dance made their change. I'm not saying they ripped them off, but I'm saying that latter day Dead Can Dance sounds an awful lot like Vangelis and Irene Pappas. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but it's coincidental. I love these records. I love all of the Vangelis records. Even the ones that are flawed. Soil Festivities is one. There's a few others that they just get a little noodly and a little dissonant and unlistenable. We've talked here before about a couple of Vangelis records, specifically Voices and The City. Yeah. I'm a big fan. They're still finding things and releasing certain things, and I pick them up all the time. But this thing with Irene Pappas is different, and again, go to the description, and you'll be able to hear some of it, and tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. Tell me if I'm wrong, and that's going to do it for this week. I'll be back on Monday. I'm not sure if we're doing a special episode this weekend. I record these a little bit ahead of time, and it's a blur. Other than that, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate it if you subscribe. Please tell a friend, as they say. And I'll be back on Monday with a whole grip of new movies that you may or not have heard of, another book, and a bunch of records. So until that time, take care.